buy as many things. So companies don't have to make as many things. So people start losing their jobs. Companies start going bankrupt. And what you could symbolize it as is in stage one, the banking system throws the fishing line out. And then at stage two, the depression, the bust, they then reel it in. So all these people have taken out all this debt. And if you don't pay back the debt, which is fresh air money, then the bank has the right to take your real wealth, your car, your land, etc. And so as people can't pay back their loans because there's not enough money in circulation anymore to do so, the banks start getting hold of more and more real wealth, land, resources, houses, all the rest of it, in exchange for fresh air money. And then they move to the bust area, which we're in now, and people are in desperate financial straits. And on the face of it, some of the banks are. But what I'm talking about here is the banking system that this network of families control. Individual banks can go bust. It doesn't affect the system. The system's still there. You could think of it of, if you own the European Champions Football League, you don't care if Manchester United lose to Barcelona or Barcelona lose to Manchester United. Like, you don't really care about individual banks, where this one goes under or this one, gets stronger or whatever, because you own the whole game. And it's from that level that all this boom and bust is manipulated. So the control of money in circulation is the control of society. It's control over whether some people eat, whether some people have their homes or don't have their homes. So from that point of control, you can manipulate what we have now experienced. And what did we experience? It came out of the United States. And the reason it was engineered from there is because the United States economy still today, when it is affected in some way, it has global implications. So they orchestrated it through there, and they did it like this. There was a man who was appointed head of the Federal Reserve in America, the alleged central bank of America, and most Americans think it's the central bank of the American government. It is not. It is a cartel of private banks, the most important of which is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And I've been exposing Alan Greenspan, this longtime head of the Federal Reserve. He was appointed during the Reagan-Bush administration. He remained head of the Federal Reserve through Father Bush's period, through the two Bushes periods of Clinton, and through the virtually the entire two periods of Boy George Bush, apart from a couple of years. I think it was 2006 he got out, something like that. And so he basically controlled the American economy all the way through this period. And what he did and orchestrated, and this was followed in Britain and other countries too, was a process of removing all the checks and balances of the financial system, which stopped people making ridiculous loans that people wouldn't be able to pay back, and basically stopping a greed-motivated free-for-all. All those checks and balances were taken away. What they also did was create a system where, within the banks, people were getting big bonuses for getting people to take out loans, like for houses and stuff. So the more loans they acquired and got people to take out, the more bonuses these people got. Now, there came a point through this so-called economic boom through the 1990s and into this century, where they'd basically picked off, in terms of mortgages and what have you, all the people who had the income and the financial capacity to actually pay back the loans. So if they were going to keep getting the bonuses they had to start looking elsewhere to give loans out. And the only place they could go was into the realm of people who actually did not have the financial stability and income to pay back the loan. But it didn't matter to them chasing the bonuses, because as soon as they signed the loan, they got a bonus. They'd sold another loan. And this, of course, was a disaster waiting to happen. And so what happened was eventually, staggeringly, of course, obviously, vast numbers of people started to not pay their mortgage, not pay their loans. They couldn't afford it. They never could afford it from the start. And the banks started to get in trouble in terms of cash flow and all the rest of it. And we had this crisis, which manifested towards the end of the Bush administration last year. What then happened is they got the people who represent the banks that caused the problem to come into government and decide how government was going to react to the problem. So it was like having a housebreaker invited to the police force to decide how they were going to react to this problem caused by housebreakers. I mean, it was ridiculous. And during the Bush administration, towards the end, they had a man called Henry, also known as Hank Paulson. This man was head of Goldman Sachs until 2006. And Goldman Sachs, under his stewardship, was a major player in creating this collapse. They make him, in 2006, Treasury Secretary in America. And when the collapse comes, which he's massively played a part in, he's now Treasury Secretary, and he decides how the government's going to react. So what does he decide? That the government, in other words, the American taxpayer, is going to throw multi-billions, hundreds of billions of pounds, or dollars in their case, at the banking industry to prop it up from the problems it has itself caused. This was going to stabilize the system. They knew it wasn't. And so then comes Barack Obama, who claims to be Mr. Change, but he's Mr. Business as usual, just another frontman for the same network of families that controlled Bush. So he comes in, right in the middle of this crisis of the banking system and the financial system. What does he do, Mr. Change? He appoints an economic team which is like a who's who of those who were massively responsible for creating the problem. He brings in the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank, this key bank in the Federal Reserve cartel, which was fundamentally involved in all the deregulation that allowed this free-for-all to happen and the collapse to come. And he takes this man called Timothy Geithner, and he makes him Treasury Secretary. He brings in another man, a banker's boy who's earned massive amounts of money from the banking industry, called Larry Summers, and he makes him one of his key economic advisors and executives. He brings in a guy called Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker was the longtime head of the Federal Reserve before Alan Greenspan. And Larry Summers, in 1991, wrote or signed a memo when he was chief economist to the World Bank, advising the World Bank to dump their toxic materials in third world countries and not Western countries, because in third world countries the compensation for the death and disease and injury caused by dumping these toxic materials there would be less than in a Western industrialized country. This is one of the key advisors to Barack Obama. And what do they decide, these bankers people who created the problem when they come in? They decide that the Obama administration should not, we must not throw hundreds of billions of dollars at the banking system, okay? we must throw trillions of dollars at the banking system.